Hey, folks. So, welcome once again to Thinking Out Loud. I'm super glad to finally announce that I'm gonna run another um, season of Thinking Out Loud. Last season, if you want to call it like this, we only did 4 episodes. That's why this one is number 5. And it was so cool. It was so, let's say, it was so productive that we decided that we have to continue this, right? So yeah. For those who don't know me, my name is Fran Mendez. I am the director of SNKPI Initiative, and this format, this program, this show, if you want, I used to call it like this is the worst show ever. Why? Because you might be expecting me to do like funny things, like amazing things, or super fun things, or something like that. And no, so this is about thinking out loud. That's the name, right? So for those who don't know, I'm inviting people to join every episode, and what we do is we think out loud about different things, different topics. And yeah, so one thing that I would like to mention is I'm inviting people to the live stream, but please, and I encourage you to join us via chat. So if you want to participate, you know that we are on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn, we are on Twitch, and on Twitter as well. Not sure. I think on Twitter, if you comment on Twitter, we don't see the comments. But if you comment on the other platforms, it will be all fine. What else? Uh, let me recall what else. So yeah. Also, please participate. Like this is a session for the community, so there will be in this case 2 people in the live stream, but we want to be this like a collaborative thinking process. And so leave your comments on the chat. As you can see, they're appearing in the screen. Um, Trolls allowed as well, so that's also fine, in a nice way, of course. So what else? Yeah, before I forget, want to mention that we've been trying to understand how we could be enabling closed captions or closed captioning. I'm not sure how to call it, and subtitles if you want. And yeah, it's hard. It is a tough thing to do it live, but it's not impossible. And we managed to enable closed captions on YouTube, only on YouTube. That's the downside, I would say. So if you prefer to listen to ads with closed captions, head over to YouTube and enable them. Other than that, yeah, I wish you all that you enjoyed this episode and this show, right? Call it whatever you want, and that you actually you enjoy time with us and participate with us. That topic today is about event-driven architectures. What a surprise, right? And it's not going to be strictly about async API. This time, this is going to be around event discovery, event documentation, and event governance, if you want, like the different parts of event governance, if you want. And I was curious, like when it comes to event discovery and documentation, like who is like the right person, in my opinion, to talk about this. So I decided to invite our um, folk, Dave Boyne. So welcome, Dave.
Hello, thanks for having me. I gotta say, the intro was amazing.
Yes, we were just talking before the live stream, and he was like, "You gotta get a countdown or something." I was like, hold on, man, hold on. I'm ready for that. So
Yeah.
this is all this that you see, all the design, the logos, everything is a great work by Missy Turco. She's the designer of the Async API initiative and working at Postman. One of the designers, sorry. So she used to be the only designer, but not anymore. So yeah, and so thanks a lot, Missy. This is, as you can imagine, as you can see, is amazing work. And hold on, I mean, there's more. You'll see at the end of the live stream, you'll see that there is an outro video, and there is a tune from the great Greg Meldrum from Solace, so who created the Async API song, and this time he created a tune for Thinking Out Loud. This is amazing, like collaborative work, like community work. This is amazing. I love it. So yeah. So yeah, Dave. I was explaining to people that this is a thinking session, if you want. So it wouldn't be different than any other meetings that we have regularly. And but yeah, you might want to introduce yourself to people and see what and say what you're doing.
Cool.
Over
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, I'm Dave. So at the moment, so kind of like I spent, well, I don't know, I spent a lot of my career kind of building products for teams and, standardized, and solutions and things like that. But the last kind of 5 months, I've been working actually with open source full time. So part of the Async API initiative and Postman Open Technologies, but mainly focused on event-driven architectures. And a bit about the past of that is I kind of got introduced a couple of years ago to the concept around event-driven stuff. I got more hands-on with it, mainly in AWS and things like that. But then just learned to love it. I don't know what it was, and then start writing tools around it, and then start meeting people like Fran, for example. So yeah, at the moment I get to work on this stuff kind of full time. And what do I do? Just explore kind of different problems people are having, different tooling that's out there, and engage with community people. Like that could be like interviewing people and talking about their problems, VDA, and also just engaging, on Twitter and various things, and seeing what's out there and what problems need solving, and trying to I don't know, come up with some ideas, but also learn. I tend to try and learn in public and teach in public, if that makes sense. So I'm quite open about what I don't know and what I think I know, but I don't know, and what I don't know. Yeah. So
Yeah, I feel you there. Like it's always a constant learning process, and I completely agree. You're teaching in public as well, so there I myself discovering a lot of things thanks to you, thanks to of the staff that you're sharing, and I'm sure that there are many people out there who are learning a lot. Of course, not just junior people, but also experienced developers who are just getting started with event-driven architectures, or even not necessarily. I'm not getting started with event-driven architectures, and I keep learning from you as well. So yeah, like that's really cool. That's really cool, man. So there is something that you might want to talk about as well. You tell me if you want overall, of course. But I'm gonna show a quick demo to people while we speak. Right. Let me enable this. Sorry, I went mainstream. Yes. So, what is this, man? You might want to talk about.
yeah. So this is this is a project that's taken. I think it started in about December. It's called Event Catalog, and I think at the time. So what is it? All right, let's start with what is it. It's a tool. It's a tool that allows you to document your EDA, and how do you do that? I think that's the key part. Is through which I feel, is tooling that's already familiar with people. So markdown files as an example. And with Markdown files, we can document our events, we can document our services, and soon you'll be able to actually document your domains and group things up. That's what I'm working on now. So the idea here is, so why? Okay, start with the why. Is as I'm engaging, I guess, as I'm engaging with a lot of people in the EDA space, and async API, for example, there is a need that you can see, right? There is a growing need for governance. There's a growing need for specifications, and async API, I think, provide a good example of how to do that. How to document your consumers, your publishers, and your channels and your messages. And all event catalog really is kind of like a different spin on that, but also it does integrate with async API, which is an optional plugin. But it's just another way to, how do you visualize, how do you have a tool that your team can use to understand what an event is, understand what the service is, understand the publishers and subscribers and everything else like that. And there's also like visualization tools in here that allow you to see the relationships between things and drag things around, as you can see there, which is a good demo.
Yeah, this is actually really cool. Like this, sorry to interrupt you. Like this diagram where you can see a service publishing certain messages and which others are receiving it. This is actually really cool.
Yeah, and I think when we put the visualizer, this a similar kind of tool in the Async API Studio, and it gets quite a lot of good feedback. And I think what I'm learning anyway is that I think there is a lot of visual need with EDA stuff in general. I don't know, for me anyway, I'm kind of like more of a visual learner. And if I was in a whiteboard session right now with you, Fran, and we were to design, I don't know, a system of some sorts, I would start drawing boxes like most of us do and drawing things and how to visualize things. And but I'm not sure the tooling is there for it, although we have Miro and stuff like that. So we can get there. But I wanted to explore writing a tool that just allows us to easily, just a tool that's a static site generator, as it's built on Next.js, that's just aimed at EDA documentation. That's its goal. That's its goal. It's not a documentation site for blogs. It's not a documentation site for, I don't know, SaaS products or anything else like that. There's no theming at the moment.
At the moment, yeah.
But it's designed. That's what it's designed for. Is just to provide people with a tool to do that. And I think what I kind of learned. So this was December. We're in February. What I've learned over the last couple of months is, as you build this stuff in public, like I show a lot on Twitter and stuff, and you start getting a lot of engagement, right? And you start thinking, people, this looks cool. What is it? Where can I have it? It's like, it's not finished yet. I'm trying to finish it. You start piling on the stress.
But I must say that you are a master on creating hype on Twitter. Got all of us hyped. Like, when is this guy going to release event catalog? Yeah. I want to try it already.
Which was good feedback, good initial feedback, I think. So it felt, for me anyway, there was a need for something like that. So it went live in January, and then since then it's had a slow, healthy progression. We've had there's a community on Discord, just over 100 people now. Some core core people on there providing feedback and actually using the tool, which is awesome. And we had pull requests. I think there's 11 contributions so far. Small documentation fixes to actual full implementation stuff, which is hype machine, which is good. So I don't know. It's exciting. It's exciting to see, and hopefully it solves a problem. But we'll see in time, really, how well it does solve a problem, and just get feedback. So yeah. Kind of a big explanation, but I guess
so yes,
to summarize,
I was just like, I wanted to read it out loud, like, so people can so those who are not noticing, like Sergio was saying, +1 to the hype machine generator called Boyne. or Boyne maybe. So we call you Boyne instead.
Yeah, go for it.
And yeah, in the good sense, of course.
Yeah.
If you want to learn more about event catalog, I completely forgot to share it before, but I do it now. So eventcatalog.dev, I think it's the right one. I didn't check,
Hmm.
but I think that's the right one.
Yeah.
So yeah, head over to event catalog because it's a really cool tool. I want to mention something. So this is an async API live stream. It's called Thinking Out Loud, blah blah blah, and all stuff. Like it kinda looks like something separated sometimes, but no, this is an async API initiative inside the async API initiative. Um, but I must say, like Event Catalog is not like an async API initiative project, right? So this is Dave's stuff, right? So he actually integrated it with async API, so you can actually uh, can you import it or not yet? You
Yeah.
can, right? I think yes, you
Yeah,
can
that's
import
right.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there were two key principles with the tool, which was, well, number one, it needs to be easy to use, and needs to be well documented itself. Needs to be documented, right? And number two, it needs to be, the biggest feedback with most documentation tools is they get out of sync straight away. Okay, so what's the point? Why should I document my events and services when I have teams constantly building them? So it actually supports plugins, and the plugins at the moment are called generators. And you can take a brand new brand new event catalog out of the box, and an async API file or multiple async API files, and plug them in using the plugin, and it will generate your services, generate your events, generate the markdown files, generate the relationship, the diagrams, and everything else like that.
Mhm.
So that's the beauty of the spec, right? Is you know immediately where to look for messages, where to look for channels, where to look for everything else. So we also have, I think in the community, we also have people like exploring like Kafka plugins and other plugins. So the whole idea is, at top level, really, it's taking a source and then mapping it into event catalog stuff, which is markdown files. So you could scrape the internet somewhere and generate a markdown file. So if you can do that, then you can create a plugin for event catalog, and then you can just render, if it follows the same format, the front matter and the stuff underneath, you can render any service, any event you want. So
I'm that's cool. I'm curious. I was thinking just now, like, how the hell did Dave came up with the idea of event catalog? Like, I know that you're working in public, that you're reading people who give you feedback and so on. But at some point, and I'm saying because so this is a disclaimer. So Dave works for us at Async API inside Postman, right? So he's working on Async API as well. And at some point before Christmas, you kinda like disappeared, right? Kinda disappeared, and suddenly I started seeing a lot of push into event catalog, and I was like, well, that's a cool idea. And I remember that I talked to you. We had the chat, and and you were like, so I'm building this and that, blah blah blah. I'm building this event catalog thing. This is really cool, blah blah blah. But I never really asked you, like, what was the main motivation for you?
yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think the main motivation was, I don't know what it is, but I, I when I kind of build tools, open source stuff, I quite like building the documentation that goes with it, and static site generations in general. I just quite like building sites, which is it's just a weird thing. So there's a project called Docusaurus, which is open source by Facebook. And the whole purpose of Docusaurus is to allow developers to easily create documentation for projects, for like open source projects. And and if you go to any of my open source projects, you'll see I use it everywhere. So it's a really nice tool that you can basically say, okay, here's the command line, give me a new Docusaurus project, and how do I fill it in? I've got a config file and I have markdown files. Okay, and that kind of, I've been using that for about 5 years now, and that was just in the back of my head, and I was kind of thinking, well, what if we could have an enriched, so keep that in the back of your head, and now you've got the EDA kind of problem emerging in my head, in my mind, which is we have specs emerging, we have more people using EDA, we have more stuff going on. Could we in theory, as a test, write something that could generate documentation just for EDA stuff? So so that was it. That was the spike. It just started with a spike. Yeah, can I do that?
So,
Can I write a tool to do that?
so in some to some degree, you basically like thought on a subset of Docusaurus, like Docusaurus. Damn it, I can't pronounce this.
Yeah, no, you said
So,
it right.
so Docusaurus. That's what we will say in Spanish. So, like a subset in terms of use case, right? So Docusaurus is for everyone, right? Any kind of project. And I think in your head it was like, oh, it will be cool to have a Docusaurus for event-driven architectures, right? Like
Exactly.
kind of like that, yeah.
Exactly. And I spent a lot of time. Thankfully, GitHub now have the feature where you can press the dot right and go into the editor. I literally spent a lot of time just in Docusaurus code. How do they do this? How does this bit work? How does a config file work in Docusaurus? How do they, and all their architecture and all, and if you see event catalog, you'll actually see a lot of it was inspired / copied from Docusaurus. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no shame about copying in this case.
Yeah.
It's not copying, it's reusing, right?
Yeah.
That's what we say in open source, right? I'm reusing someone else's code, but it's true. Like, I mean, in my experience, I started this in KPI as a copy, I literally copied Open API and started from top to bottom reading and like rewriting stuff that didn't make sense for event-driven architectures. And that's how it all started. Like, you gotta start from some point. Sometimes you start from scratch because you have nothing, and sometimes you have some kind of inspiration. And if it's open source, we win, right? So it's better for everyone. It's actually also something good for OpenAPI as well, because we're given a bunch of feedback through the years. We've gave a lot of feedback to OpenAPI as well. And people like we're coming back to OpenAPI saying, hey, so I can do this in KPI but not in OpenAPI. I can do this in OpenAPI but not in KPI. So it will be cool that things are, at least the common parts are compatible, right? Or in terms of features. So yeah. So it's actually really cool. So no shame in recognizing that you copied something. You can say you can always say, like, I got inspiration, and which is a much more friendly way of saying.
There's tons of inspiration in there, I guess.
Oh yeah,
but it went well, and as I said, it started. What inspired me, I guess, going back to that, is just that I was thinking, would it be possible, and would there be value to people in this thing, right? And as I was building it, rather than sitting away for months and months and then big bang release, although I did a bit of that, I guess, but as I'm building it, just sharing on Twitter, right? Sharing, okay, would this be value to anyone? If I could take a markdown file and give you this, would you enjoy, would you find that valuable? And a lot of people engaging, this is awesome. And that was it, that was the birth.
And before you were mentioning this async KPI plugin, that was the first plugin you created for event catalog. And I got immediately curious when you created this plugin. I was like, Okay, so he can import or he can use async API files to generate an event. But currently, state of art right now is async API only represents a single application,
Mhm.
or terminology of event catalog is single service, right?
Mhm.
So I was immediately thinking, like, if you feed just one async API file, I mean, it's
Mhm.
kind of valuable, but um, it is valuable, for instance, in the sense that, like, for instance, we're providing that, like, we are providing documentation generator for async API. But what I find valuable about event catalog is that it's not just one service, it's your whole architecture, or your whole domain, if you want.
Mhm.
You can restrict it to whatever you want, and you have different services, different applications publishing and subscribing to different events, right?
Mhm.
So, and actually, one cool thing that you that we could see on the video uh, that I showed before about event catalog is these diagrams, these generated diagrams, like this service is publishing these events here, and then these events are flowing through or to this service and these other services. So they all share this, right? But yeah, and I was like, but that's not possible with a single async API file,
Mhm.
right? So I wonder if you notice this limitation, like if when
Yeah.
working on
Oh, we
the
had.
plugin.
Yeah. So the first initial release of the plugin supported one file. So how does it work? So it goes to your async KPI file. It could figure out what the service is because it assumes this is the file is the service, and then get the messages, the publishers and subscribes from that. And then on Discord, we had someone provide feedback and say, would it be nice? I've got lots of async KPI files, and rather than because on the plugin you have to specify the path to the file, could it be an array? And could we specify multiple files? So yeah, that was it. A couple of days later, pull request was in, and now we support multiple files,
Mhm.
which probably has its own. You probably might come into your own problems. I'm not sure, but you can, in theory, at the moment, use as many as you want. It will go through them and generate the markdown
Yeah,
files for every service, every event, every publisher, every subscribe. Yeah. So
that's
again, that,
good
that,
to
that
hear.
was only that was only through the feedback, right? That was only through the community feedback because it wasn't designed, it wasn't built like that or designed
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
And the same with the node graph stuff. You saw the visualizer
Mhm.
that was built by someone in the community. So I was using Mermaid in the Markdown files, but we had a pull request to use Flow, React Flow, which is what async API uses too. And they look a lot better. They're enriched. We can add icons. We can do stuff.
Yeah,
And then that pull request was in, and then I just extended it to build the visualizer, and now you can visually see. As I said, you go down the left-hand side, click on all the events, click on the service. How does this thing work? And what's going on? So yeah, yeah. I don't know
that's
what
stuff.
if
Yeah,
that answers your
I
question, but
can I can
yeah,
imagine it's overwhelming sometimes. Like
yeah,
it's lots of feedback that you receive from the community, and you get an explosive response from the community. I can see it. So yeah, congrats for that, by the way.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Thanks.
um, so you know because you're part of Async KPI. So um, we're at the Async KPI. We're trying to, like, literally build the future of event-driven architectures. That's what the website says, but it's true. Like, it's not just a tagline there, a beautiful tagline or marketing tagline or anything. No, it's true. That's our main goal, right? That's why, in first place, I was supporting you with this. Like, I wanted to make clear that even though this is not an Async API project, I fully support that you work on it, because we have both the same, like Async API and Event Catalog are both um, like driving event-driven architectures in the same direction. So we're pushing for the same thing, right? And that's actually something really good. But with the new not bad, but also um, with the new works that we're doing on async API 3, there is a discussion that we might allow, we might allow on the spec that people can define multiple applications or multiple services in a single
Mm-hmm.
async API file, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is an ongoing conversation right now for version
Mm-hmm.
3, which we hope to uh, to release this year. We don't know yet when. That all depends on how many people get to contribute, right? So, so if you who are listening, like you all who are listening, you want it to be like ready, you know what to do. Like you have to join the effort. So yeah. Um, what I mean is that at some point, an async API file will be able um, to define multiple applications, and therefore we have Studio, right? We have Async API Studio, and Async API Studio is currently allowing you to document a single application because that's what we got. And Async API is a single application. But on one hand, we have this Spec 3 work to support multiple applications in a single file. And on the other hand, we have Studio, a Studio feature by Maciek or Bantek, who's on the chat. Actually, first message of the chat, um, and he proposed that we have multiple files support on Studio, so people can edit multiple files. You can kind of have like a project, right? You have your EDA project where you have like multiple async API files, and then you will be able to see the documentation and generate code and so on and so on. But yeah, it kind of feels like natural that next step will be event catalog support, right? Or something like what event catalog is doing. It's like inside Studio as well, or maybe outside Studio, we'll see. But like I want to see, or I want to explore all my events that are coming from these async API files, right? And to me, it feels like a natural next step will be as a user, as an async API user, async API Studio user, right? Either with multiple file support or with multiple applications inside a single async API file, I will want to see my whole architecture, like my whole events, like discover them, my applications. So essentially, event catalog, right? so I was like, damn, like we have to integrate both immediately. Like we have to find a way to integrate both. Like I mean, I don't want it to be like we build an async API event catalog, blah blah blah, or call it, name it whatever you want, and that will compete with event catalog. No, that would be stupid. Like event catalog, it's open source, and I mean, it's not open governance. It's just it's your project yet, but could be in the future. And what I mean here is that, in my opinion, not sure what you think about it, but I think it will in the future, not a distant future, we should go in this direction. Like event catalog and Studio and event catalog should be integrated more tightly, not from the event catalog side maybe, but from Studio side of things. So Studio should be able to let you visualize all your stuff, right? Or like event catalog is doing, maybe embedding an event catalog, dynamically rendered event catalog, maybe something that could be like every time you make a change on your async API file, it could be like boom, immediately regenerated the event catalog right on the fly. So don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, wow, yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot there. So I think you're right. I think with the spec changes, and I think as you said, if you could do multiple files, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction, isn't it? Because I think something I've been doing recently is also kind of interviewing, not interviewing, but I guess talking to community members about async API, right, and the specification. And some feedback. There is some feedback in the community about how do you, well, you've heard it in the past about the multiple files versus the one file versus the overall thing and everything else like that. And I guess if we were talking about visualizations, of our architecture and our events and our services, it kind of makes sense. And as you said, it feels like a natural direction for the tooling to go. Now, it's interesting because on one hand you've got so the core principle of the event catalog is the static site generation, is the ease of use, is the not tied to anything but can visualize stuff. But then, like most things, there'll be definitely parts of that which can be used elsewhere. If the visualization tool or the library that was contributed could be picked out and done somewhere, or as you said, if it's spitting out static HTML anyway, could we just do that and embed these web pages somewhere else? But there'd be a bit of work to do, but also it's hard with this stuff because we also kind of like need the use cases in the community to give us feedback on how they'd expect that to work. So I guess we could figure out how we could get it to work. Might not necessarily be what we should be doing. I don't know. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
just because it's possible doesn't mean we have to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's one way. In the end, actually, so maybe we don't need event catalog. So we don't need the full event catalog thing on Studio. Maybe we just need the diagrams, right? So that's all we need, and then it's just a matter of having like a kind of visualization, which actually you already contributed to Studio, that you can visualize one single application publishing or consuming messages, so you can actually see it. But it still feels like not enough. We need to see like the whole diagram, right? Now, this is just one application. We need to see how things connect to each other, right?
I think, the more I think about it a lot recently, and the more I kind of think about that space in general is, and stuff I'm trying to get into at the moment is like open telemetry, right? Which is like an open tracing. And if you can, like, if you talk about Studio, you talk about event catalog, you talk about the future of any EDA tool or open source EDA tool, right? It's kind of like if async API, for example, could tell me the broker and how to connect to it and everything else like that, that's interesting. So I can actually connect to something. And if I connect to something, I can actually start listening for stuff. And if I can listen to stuff, I can actually start representing this on the UI. And I can actually start. So we go back to your flow diagrams, your service diagrams, showing, the future for me anyway, showing the architecture is great. But could you imagine these little bubbles going between things in real time? Your events, which blows my mind. So I'm thinking, how do I do that? How can I achieve that? And I think things like the open tracing and cloud events and all this stuff is going to help us get there for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine when you said that in real time. I could imagine like a nice animation on the diagrams, like an event popping up, like you get a new one. Like I discovered a new one on the broker. It's like
why not?
And suddenly it's connected to something, or to multiple things. It's like
and then
immediately that would be amazing.
The interesting thing about it all is it's also like state, right? So all your events are going on and they're going across time. So why couldn't we also kind of imagine a slider on the UI where we could like go back in time and forward in time, so we can replay the visualization of the events going through. So if you had a bug in your system at 2 a.m, you could go back at 2 a.m and press play, and you'll see the events come through. Click on one, and now you can see the event and the malformed payload, or the bugs, or the problems, or the failures, or the service that's crossed off, and all this stuff. So
I can see. Yeah, I can see that there's a lot of overlap there with open telemetry as you and open tracing as well. That's just open telemetry, but that would be super cool. and not just that, like we have tools. There's one I can't remember the name, so forgive me, Solas folks. But Solas donated a tool to async API, and I think it's event discovery or something like that. Um, it's a tool to let that lets you connect to a broker and listen, like listen to the broker events and document them, generate async API files out of them, right? Or not sure
Hmm.
if it's a async API file only altogether, or just the message, right? But the cool
Hmm.
thing is that you can. So this part is already implemented in a library. So
Yeah.
we have that piece, we have Studio, we have the
Hmm.
spec, we have event catalog with all these diagrams, right? And
Hmm.
we have we will probably have to build something so people can actually interact from the documentation. They can interact with the broker and actually
Hmm.
send test payloads or something like that,
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
and or subscribe and see like I'm gonna subscribe to
Yeah.
this channel, to this
Just
topic,
gonna listen in.
and
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
what's in there, right?
Yeah.
And that will be super cool. Maybe not for production, but for testing, that will be
Exactly.
super cool, right? Or developing.
But
And also,
sorry, go for it.
yeah, no, maybe also for production. Like I was saying, like maybe for production, but only to understand what's happening. It's
Exactly.
just that I always imagine production like, like super fast that you can see nothing there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You
but it
got
doesn't have to
the,
be the way.
yeah, there'll be some visualization challenges there for sure.
Yeah,
But exactly what you said. Imagine just sending test payloads. Imagine just listening in, like eavesdropping in on your flow of your events, and be like, okay, what's going on here? And you know, there are tons. There, you know, it, I think the key for me anyway, the thing I'm passionate about is how do you do all that, but how do you make that all accessible to people,
yeah,
and easy enough to understand, but also easy enough to use,
yeah,
um, and that comes with the tooling, but also mainly the documentation and the interfaces and plugins and all this kind of stuff. As soon as it becomes hard, if you're, we just spoke then about there's if we integrate open tracing, if we do open this and open that in cloud events, and we do async API and all this kind of stuff, um, do you to get I don't know what the answer is, but to get to the end goal, um, how many steps do I need to do as a team and
oh,
as a developer to get there? And we kind of want to minimize that if we can and make it easy. But I think that's the key. But
oh, I see what you. Yeah. I see
yeah.
what you say. Yeah, I was initially thinking that from our perspective, like the ones who are building the tools, how many
Mm.
steps do we need to do to get there? But you mean from the user perspective, like,
Exactly.
yeah, like how many steps do I have to do to in order to get to where I want to get, right?
Exactly. This is the thing about event catalog that I wanted to do, which was, I've got npm, create event catalog package. But I want, get. I don't know. For me, anyway, it's kind of how do you get to the immediate value,
Yeah.
for a developer using your tool? Because if it's gonna, I don't know. I'm lazy. If it's gonna take me more than half an hour to use a tool, I'm probably not going to use your tool. I don't know. That's just me. Depends on how desperate I was. But
No, it's not just you. Developers are lazy. We all are. That's why we get here. I mean, not lazy, but lazy in doing maybe manual work
yeah,
and manual stuff. We're always looking for automation. That's why we're building all these specs and event
yeah,
catalog and all this stuff. Like we don't want to repeat things. We don't want to maintain documentation out of band documentation,
yeah,
right? That's
yeah.
so yeah, because that's a
So,
lot of work. So yeah.
so there's a lot there. There's a lot of innovation still to happen. There's a lot of you know things to explore. I think.
I'm imagining as well, like we from studio, we could. So I initially said, like I see event catalog like embedded on inside studio, but maybe
Mhm.
that's not the right word. So because that would mean that we're literally embedding
Mm.
event catalog inside. And but I was thinking, like, what about it? Or what if we will build like so Studio also becomes somehow like an editor for event catalog. So, for instance, I explain myself better. So, imagine that I want to create a new application, a new service, right? I create a new service and I start, and this is what I'm going to describe is sort of the feature that is proposed that we create a service like we describe like I'm public this service is publishing this message and subscribing to these other messages but in a visual way. So you go with your mouse and connect things and here and there, blah blah blah, right? So you don't have to type async API because it's a pain to learn and type async API files. Like you said, like if it's gonna take me more than 30 minutes, I'm probably not gonna use it.
Mm-hmm.
True. I mean, unless you have to use it,
Yeah.
then you probably abandon it, and it's like don't care. And that's one of my main goals with async API, like that we actually hide all the complexity from of async API from the user, and it can be presented in a nice way, in a human human understandable UI, right? And a human or a nice UI for a human, not for machine, right? Not for a developer necessarily. So so it will be cool that in Studio you can add an application and connect all the dots and so on to create an async API file behind the scenes. But also that will let you edit the markdown stuff that you can put on the on the async API description, which will be the service description of event catalog, which will be the markdown that goes there, right? So that's there's a one match there, and that will actually be super cool that you have all the UI working for you, and so behind the scenes it's generating async API files. So then you can navigate everything, you can edit everything inside Studio, right? Not necessarily event catalog, but at some point you might want to share this with your colleagues and deploy this somewhere in an internal server somewhere in your company, or a public server as well. Like I want to share this with my colleagues, and I'm gonna generate event catalog and deploy it to this server from Studio, right?
Yeah.
This thing might make a lot of sense, you know. Like so, I edit all the stuff in Studio, right? And instead of because yeah, what I was thinking is that editing markdown files, lots of markdown files in event catalog, and lots of front matters as well in the markdown files. It's also a pain because you have to go manually one by one and creating all the, you know, like produces this event, subscribes to this event, blah blah blah. That's a lot of manual work. If you have a big architecture like with many, like I don't know, hundreds or thousands of messages, that's a lot of work, and you know, that's a lot of things that you will have to do. So if we could make it easier from a UI perspective, that they can, you know, like they can make it in a visual way, probably this could be useful for the people. We have to check, of course, we have to consult the community, of course, and gather feedback. And then at some point, like I said, I want to share it with my colleagues, and I deployed event catalog in my server. And what they get is event catalog generated. You know, I think that will be super cool. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh yeah, I think I think there could be something there, right? As you said, like you want to, you know, start from, you want a new service. So I use a tool. I use the Studio to create a new service. So I say Kafka thing, and these are my publishers. You know, and I'm using this low code tool to do that, which would be great. And then, as you said, what can you do from there? Okay, generate an async API file. Okay, generate a mock server. Okay, send a test payload. Right. Okay, that's interesting. And then also generate some external documentation. You know, as you just said, which you could, in theory, click that button, it builds it for you because you've got the async API files, and then automatically host it somewhere for you. Right. Which is wherever you want, because it's just static content, so S3 bucket or whatever. And I think the great thing about that is you've got the low code, you've got the the detail for enough detail for developers, like what's my Kafka broker URL, or all this kind of stuff that people need to know. But then you have to remember, something I'm learning anyway is with EDA, it's not just for us. It isn't just for technical people, and business people, and non-technical people also, I think, like to hear about it and like to see it. And if you can bubble that up into an event catalog, for example, and your product owner might say, okay, what events are available? An email, I don't know, user created event. Okay, what does that mean? Oh, look, it's described in a way which I can understand as a product owner.
Yeah.
Not what's a user created. Oh, it goes to the Kafka and So I think what I'm getting at. I think, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think there is, there'd be huge. I don't know. I think there'd be huge value in that, especially like mock servers, right? And you imagine a studio just to say,
we could integrate with Microx. Sorry for interrupting, but we could integrate with Microx is already providing this functionality out of async API. So everything could be glued together. Yeah, everything can be there.
Yeah, and think of these things as kind of plugins to the studio. So what else can I do? Okay, Microx, event catalog, or maybe send test payloads. Okay, have we got a tool out there that can do that already? Someone building this thing, and then create this clean interface between it all. And now you have a studio that can grow on plugins, grow on all sorts of things, right? And I think that's where from experience, but also all you got to do is look around. That's where open source projects really kick off, isn't it? Look at Gatsby, for example. Look at their plugin ecosystem. It's huge, and
it's huge. Yeah.
And if you can have an ecosystem with plugins in a nice, clean interface that people can actually contribute, and remember that 30-minute rule where it's like, I want to build a plugin, but you're making it hard because you got no documentation.
Yes.
So, make it super easy. You could be onto something there, And then
we got a message in the chat from Alexander Morgot. Looks like a good first solution to try to represent our SQS SNS features design. I will give it a try, he's saying. What do you think? Like what does it mean for SQS and SNS and AWS technologies? I know that you are you like AWS technologies a lot. I honestly don't never use in production myself. I've been lucky. So sorry, just kidding. No, but I never used SQS or SNS. So how do you think this came up?
What in particular? This kind of
event catalog, maybe.
Event catalog. Okay.
Yeah.
The things with event catalog is it's not really tied to any technology, and it's kind of on purpose. So it's just tied to the concepts of publishers and subscribes and all this kind of stuff and services. So if you wanted to document your SNS and SQS, your SNS topics and your SQS queues or your event bridge stuff, there is an event bridge plugin actually for event catalog, then it's possible. For example, if you could go to your SNS, if you go to AWS and get all your SNS topics in the CLI in the terminal, you can generate markdown files for that automatically. You could have event catalog automatically just pulling the stuff down, generating the files, and do that. So can you represent SNS, SQS stuff? Yeah, for sure. There's no reason why not.
I was just thinking, we probably have to be brave here, and it's like, shouldn't we be asking AWS folks to integrate their products with event catalog as well? So they integrate in the sense of you have event bridge, for instance, and so they have all the information of the messages that are flowing around and which are the services that are sending and receiving them. It will be super cool if they could just add a button like generate event catalog, right, and download it, right?
Yeah, yeah. I never think that big, but if you're talking about like a studio kind of scenario where if you can generate a catalog using, give the input and generate it,
Yeah.
get the output, and that was, you could integrate with that, then I guess why not? Um, because as you said, EventBridge, give an example there, and they have the schema registry, so they have that you talked about a minute ago earlier, the gateway that's
Yeah.
just generating your async API files and your messages because it can listen. They have exactly the same pattern, which they're listening for messages and generating schemas and versions for you. But then all that is JSON schemas and data that you can just input and output into anything, and that goes the same with Kafka schema registries or any third party system.
Mhm.
I guess to get there, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's possible, but to get there, I think you probably need more growth. I imagine you'd need more kind of growth on the project,
Yeah.
and abilities to do this. And it'd be interesting to see, reach out to people in the future and see,
Yeah.
would they do that? What would stop them doing that? Would their users find it useful or not? No
I
idea.
was actually thinking so we're always trying to put more features into Studio, into Event Catalog, right? But
Mm,
um, sometimes the most powerful thing is that you find users where they are, right? So if they
mhm,
are at AWS, I think AWS could offer this, let's say, way or button, right? Like
mhm,
generate or and download event catalog. Same for, let's say, Confluent, Kafka,
mm,
Solaz, right?
mm,
All the brokers. I think all the broker vendors could be jumping in here, and same for not just event catalog for async API. Like it would be
mm,
cool that with a button you can generate your async API file, right?
mhm.
So that would be um, like
Mm.
an enabler if you want. That would be an
Yeah,
enabler because if you can download your async API file out of, I mean, it's already possible with Solaz,
yeah.
by the way. But if you can do it with Kafka, I mean, a Kafka vendor, or you can do it with an MQTT vendor or whatever, or AWS. The cool thing is that then you can input this file to Studio, and from
Mhm.
there start working and like generating event catalog or doing more stuff, right? Not just event catalog. So yeah, I think, I'm not sure what you think. I think you were saying like it's you never thought that big, but and I
Yeah,
and I get you,
yeah,
but yeah,
yeah.
don't you think it's the way to go? Like people should be able to find these useful tools where they are, right?
I, I think so. Yeah. I mean, I guess I was just thinking when you were talking there. I guess look at Open API, right? And look at all this stuff where it's you can take your Open API, you can put it into Postman, you can put it into this tool, that tool, every tool. Same as Async API, right? It's on that projection, and all the tooling is coming out of it. Um, so I guess, as you said, why can why in an example of that, why can like Event Catalog be the same? Um, I don't know. It feels too infant at the moment to even contemplate that. But yeah, it's a good point.
So Alexander is commenting that yeah, generating from AWS is good when there is already the infra in place with
Mm,
existing messages going through it. But when you're trying to design first those async flows,
mm,
um, he says like you're more naked, right? So it's like you have nothing basically,
mhm,
right? So that means that, and it's a good point. So it goes both ways. I think it should go both ways. Integrations should be in both directions. So from AWS, you should be able to generate an event catalog or async API files and so on. But I think that from Studio, maybe that could be the tool that you should be able to connect to your AWS event bridge instance and and deploy infra. That would be super cool. Not Event Bridge instance, but to your AWS account and start deploying infra, right? That's like probably long in the future, but yeah, like something to probably consider. I think I lost you, maybe. Yes, I think so. Where is Boyne? So Boyne is gone. Well, folks, so while we wait, and let's try to see if we can get him. I hope it's not my connection. So if someone can just leave a chat message, so I know I'm here live, that would be super cool. Yeah. Let me check. All right. So technical problems, and at exactly 1 hour after we started. I hope we're not reaching a limit. I hope so. Okay, so Sergio is there. So that means that I'm live. All right, so we got Boyne back.
Yeah.
Yay!
Chopped
Oh,
off.
exactly 1 hour. Exactly at 1 hour,
Yeah.
you disconnected, and I was like, "Did we hit the limit or something?" But
Yeah, no,
no,
it's good.
like
It was good time. At least it was at the end and not at the start. Yeah.
So I was saying that yeah, like infra, yeah, integrations should go in two ways, right? Not just like as Alexander was mentioning, right? So when you have something that's cool because you can generate your event catalog,
Mm-hmm.
but also it should be possible from Studio maybe
Yeah.
that you design all your infra, right? All how everything is going to be done,
Mm-hmm.
and then deploy it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like deploy it to AWS or to Confluent, Kafka,
Yeah.
or whatever providers, right? So that will be super cool, in my opinion, like something super useful. And not just that, like because you have everything defined with Async API,
Mm-hmm.
then after you finish doing all the design and deploying, then you can continue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it will be going both ways. So then you update something on AWS, not on Studio,
Mm-hmm.
but you download the Async API file and
Mm-hmm.
you probably commit it to some repo,
Mm-hmm.
and so things can be rebuilt. So like Async API can be the glue there, right?
Yeah.
Can be exactly the glue there, in my opinion. So yeah, that's a good point, Alexander. Thanks for commenting.
Yeah, there's lots to think about. I think, to be honest, I think with events and event kind of architectures, I think event first design is quite common, right? Start from the events.
We got us. We got Jenna saying like, "Fuck! Now I want to build." It sounds super awesome. Sorry for the fact, but I'm actually not in favor of censoring words. So yeah, he said "fuck," and yeah, sounds super awesome indeed. And I think we should go in this direction, in my opinion. But lots of work. Lots of work.
Yeah.
Lots of work. Lots of contributions. So yeah.
Yeah.
So before we finish, and a quick question might be quick in terms of responding, but not in terms of thinking. So um, where do you see event-driven architectures in 5 years from now?
That's a good question. One-click deploy systems, yeah, that would be good. Yeah, as I said, I'm fairly newish to the space. I worked a lot in kind of like synchronous stuff and mainly like a lot of front end stuff in the past, building applications and APIs and various things. So the last 2 years, I think we've seen. I feel like we've seen a growth in it, right? I was introduced through serverless EDA through serverless. Yeah, I don't have much knowledge about Kafka clusters. How do I manage Kafka clusters? I haven't got a clue, because that's kind of it felt like that's completely different route to what I was into. So for me, where do I see it in 5 years? Where I see it now is the barrier. I think the barrier to entry is reducing. Yeah. So how can I send an event in Amazon or Google? Google have pub sub, right? So how do I send an event? You just kind of integrate with their service and you get it. And I think there's huge benefits to having synchronous and asynchronous architectures. So where do I see it? I think it's just going to continue to grow, right? I think people are going to continue to use it. I think more serverless offerings are going to come in, and can't quite blow it, aren't I? Serverless offerings, serverless offerings will come in, make it easier in 5 years' time. I just think it's I just think it will continue to grow. I think when you see the business, what it comes down to for me anyway, is the business value, and it's the speed to innovation and the speed to the business value. And I think EDA really helps that and remain decoupled and allow you to scale. And I think the message is going to hone in over the next couple of years. And I think big companies, Google, Amazon, we see Upstash recently offering Kafka serverless solutions. And it's kind of come back to what I said earlier, which is reduce the barrier to entry, reduce it, yeah. But the problem is when you reduce it so much, everyone's like, we can raise an event like I was, yeah. So I raise events, I raise more events and more events. And now you're in a position where you've got 100 of events. And how do you document that? How do you scale events? And then that's where async KPI come in, and all these specifications that are emerging. So it's just an interesting space to be in. It's it feels like it just naturally feels right. Some of it. So the next 5 years, I have no idea, but there is a good book on it actually. If you're interested, called I think I've got it around here somewhere. But I'm an advocate for the book. Oh, here it is.
Flow architecture.
Flow architectures. Yeah, this talks about the future of EDA, and if you read it, it's interesting. Talks about things like, imagine a world where we have events going not just around our system but outside our system, and how data is important to everyone, but also organizations and cross data streams. And when you go to work for companies, more and more companies are interested in real-time data, and real-time data is events. But how do you, like, for example, Fran, if I want to integrate with your business, how would I do that? I'd use webhooks, and I'd have to do some auth stuff and whatever, boring, right? So, but this is it. So, but what happens if you had an event stream? What happens if you're producing this stuff in a different way, or using different protocols that I could just listen in on and consume? So, long answer, but
no, it's okay.
It's going to keep us busy for sure.
It's gonna keep us busy. Yeah. It's like that's the definition. Like, it's gonna keep us like, damn it, it's like everything is yet to be built. So yeah, it's a lot of work. While you were speaking, there were two more comments. One from Jonah saying like one-click system deployment, and Alexander saying also you could compare your design to the generated infrastructure and detect wrong message or other things. Like, what I like about this? Like, this is really thinking out loud. What we're doing here, this is really thinking out loud. Like, we're thinking in public, and we have the people joining us to think in public, and I think that's awesome. So before we finish, because we're already over an hour, so let's start packing already. I wanted to ask you, like, what tool or what thing? Let's just stick to a tool. What tool do you think we should be building next or improving? Like, what's your top priority that you need it now?
I don't know, I'm biased. I would say just
it's okay.
What we spoke about, I would say visualization. I would say literally what we spoke about earlier, which is just make, if we can make EDA easier to deal with and to integrate with and to understand through tooling, that's where we should focus, right? And like maybe that is just sending a test payload to a bus, or listening in to event streams, or different ways to visualize stuff. I think that's that. Yeah. I think for me, if I had to pick one, it'd be more different ways to visualize this stuff. So, for example, just a quick example, like Open API. I've not looked too much at the tools and that, but when you look at standard Open API document, it has standard document, right? You have the puts and the gets, whatever else. But I want to understand what's the next evolution of that. I want to say, okay, what else? How else can we visualize that? And then with EDA, it's like, okay, we have node boxes. This connects to that. That connects to that. It's like, what's the next evolution to that? How can we visualize this even better? Why use node boxes? Why can't we, as I said to you earlier, have real events going down a river on the screen or something? I don't know. This is where, that's the stuff that gets me excited, is just bridging the gap. I think there's a lot of value to be had, and I think tools can help people. So we got to understand where to focus. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I answered that question, but yeah,
that's okay. That's okay. I think I will say, like, your answer in short is like visualizations, right?
Yeah,
Better visualizations. So. Yeah,
I think so. I think there's a lot we can do.
I agree with that. So thanks, mate. It's been like really cool. Thanks a lot for joining me today.
It's been wicked.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope the audience also enjoyed it. We'll keep working on this, on thinking out loud, on async API, on event catalog, on anything that pushes us towards this future of event-driven architectures, for sure. And yeah, before I we say goodbye, I would love to mention that next week at the same time, Wednesday at the same time, right? I'll be hosting. I'll be having our own, the big and only, the one and only Łukasz Gornicki with us, right? So you probably have heard about Łukasz from our community, and yeah, so don't miss this episode as well, because we're gonna be discussing stuff and thinking out loud about how to improve our community and how to make our community grow as well, but not just in growing numbers, but growing quality and so on, right? So yeah, thanks a lot, everyone, for watching and for participating, and see you next week.
Cool. Cheers, Fran.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.